On June 2, 1995, U.S. Air Force Captain Scott O'Grady was shot down in the skies over Bosnia. For 6 agonizing days and nights, he relied on his survival, training, cunning, and deep, deep faith in God to evade capture and possible death. He never lost trust with God. I'm having here in my hand a book, and I believe Scott O'Grady will be autographing these books between services. At least we have them here. Go buy one. If we run out, we probably will. Go to your store tomorrow. And if you're watching me on television, wherever you live in the United States of America, if you never buy books, go buy this one. Well, this book tells more than I can possibly cover this morning, but welcome with me, Captain Scott O'Grady, survivor. So you slipped on your jeans and put on your sunglasses and ran into the plane and took off. Not quite, right?
It doesn't happen that way. It's a lot more complicated than people think. To take an F-16 up for a ride is not like getting in your car and going for a Sunday drive. It's something you have to study for, you have to plan and brief, and then go out. And when you're performing the mission, it's actually a lot of work.
What happened? How did it happen? What went through you?
Well, I was flying, and we always fly as a team. There's always 2 airplanes as a minimum. And I was flying as the wingman to Captain Wright, who was leading, making the decisions. And our mission was to fly over Bosnia in support of the United Nations peacekeeping effort to enforce a no-fly zone, to make sure that none of the airplanes there were dropping bombs on people on the ground. When we fly over the area, we also have to stay away, though, from surface-to-air missile sites and anti-aircraft artillery sites that threaten us, because we were not allowed to take those threats away from the area. So we're flying in a small part of the part over Bosnia. And unfortunately, though, it's a very mountainous and rugged terrain, and they can hide threats, and they set up a trap, and the trap that was there got me. They shot 2 missiles into the air, and the second missile hit my airplane after the first one passed by.
And it hit you, you had just refueled.
Yes, we just refueled, and we have external tanks underneath the wings. The missile, I never saw it coming. I didn't have enough of a warning to be able to dodge the missile like we're trained, or to put out a decoy. And when the missile hit, it destroyed the entire airplane. I was engulfed in flames and had to eject.
Is it true the plane was split in half?
Yes, I actually was talking to Captain Wright when I got back to the hospital, and he said that the missile hit the belly of the airplane. The airplane exploded. He saw the left wing fold over, and the nose part that I was in cartwheel off into the clouds in flames, and he never saw me eject, and he didn't see a parachute. And I told him that must have been an incredible sight to watch. Because how many people get to see something like that? And we laughed about it, we joked about it, because you have to keep your sense of humor, even at a point in time where I thought I was going to die 3 times over, even at the lowest times in your life.
3 times over, you thought you were going to die. Number 1 was when?
When the missile hit and exploded, and then the second one, I wasn't sure if the ejection seat had been damaged or if it was going to work. And then after that was the parachute going to function. Was it burned or what had happened? I didn't know. And I said, "Dear God, don't let me die," as I'm reaching for the ejection handle. You know, I've lived a beautiful life, but I still have something I need to live for, something I haven't experienced in life that means more to me than anything. Please, dear God, don't let me die. And it was to my relief, I heard the canopy depart, the ejection seat function, I felt a rush of air, and now I'm looking down at the ground at over 5 miles above the earth. And I had cockpit debris and plane wreckage flying around me. And I'll have to be honest with you, the only thing I could think about was I was going to continue to fall down to the ground, and I'm scared to death of heights. So I pulled the handle to deploy the parachute right away.
afraid of heights. Why did you go to the submarines? Here you are, 5 miles above the earth. Now, how long does it take you from the time your chute opens until you hit the ground?
It took me about 25 minutes because it's about 1,000 feet per minute, and I was up at 25,000 feet. It was a long time, and it was time to observe the countryside, a time for the people on the ground to pull up with their vehicles on the road to observe me and be waiting there for me to capture me as soon as I hit the ground.
They watched your chute open, and they watched you for 25 minutes coming down, so they had plenty of time for the ground troops to nab you. How did you avoid being nabbed?
When I hit the ground, I got out of my parachute. I landed in a very small area, about as big as the area we're standing in. I was very fortunate not to land in the trees because they were there within just minutes, and if I would have been in the trees, I would have gotten entangled and I wouldn't have gotten away. But I landed in a little clearing, I grabbed my survival gear and I started to run, and I thought to myself, I'm 29, I'm in good physical condition. By the time they could get to my parachute, I'll be 20 miles to the south of here because I'm going to run so far, so fast, nobody's going to catch me. And while I'm at it, I might as well just keep running and go right back to Italy. But that didn't happen. I ran about 100 yards, and it was like the whole overwhelming situation came collapsing down on top of me. And I wasn't hyperventilating, and I don't know why, but something made me stop. I ducked underneath some low-lying branches, and I hid there. And for 6 days, I had people walk within just 5 feet of me every day. And I had people walking around me and hunting for me. I also had a helicopter chasing after me. I just laid very still, very motionless. I didn't want to give away my position. I would go to every painstaking detail to save my life. Because your life is a very, very precious thing when it's threatened. And sometimes you forget that. It's a beautiful gift that God gave us.
Now, you keep writing beautifully in your book about prayer. You even prayed the Lord's Prayer. You came into this out of a rich family, didn't you?
Well, actually, my grandmother came from Ireland with only about $5 in her pocket, and on my mother's side came over from Italy, immigrants, very poor. So my family came from very poor backgrounds. My father worked very hard to become a doctor. And what I realized growing up is that the most important thing is your family and your relationships. I have friends that are very wealthy, and I have friends that are very poor. The ones that are happy are the ones that have good families. That's where happiness really comes from.
And from childhood upward, you were exposed to the faith. You went to a good, strong Roman Catholic school that gave you a positive. Is that where you got the positive belief in God?
Well, it came from my grandparents and my father and mother and my upbringing and going to a Christian school.
You remember, you write about your faith. You said in the old-time religion, it's a kind of a mean God, and you got to be careful, right?
That's not the God that I know. I mean, God is a very loving God, and He's there for everyone. He loves all of us.
What do we have to do to get Him into our lives?
You have to open up your heart, and it's not so much just to have faith as it is to have a relationship and a trust in that faith.
How do you get that relationship?
You have to work at it every day and pray.
And you do that every day?
Yes.
We were out for a little walk alone, the two of us, last night, and you stepped on a stepping stone. Wonderful words. You said, that's it. Oh God, in you I put my trust. You put your foot on it. You said, that's it. Remember?
Yes.
You really trust Him.
You have to. And a lot of things happen in our lives that we don't understand, we can't explain, because God is not on our timeline, and sometimes we get a little anxious for things to happen in our lives. And a lot of other times we don't understand why events occur. But God is there for us, and when you look back on the path that your life has taken, everything that you truly need is provided for you.
Wow.
And when I was there for 6 days, everything I needed was provided for me.
Everything?
Everything.
You had a survival pack, but the water didn't last long.
No, the water I had, I actually had gone through that within the first 3 days. And then after that, I had to procure, or should say, find water. But I couldn't get up and walk around. So the water had to come to me. And when it came in the form of rain. And I used a sponge to collect that rain because it wasn't raining heavily. And I would squeeze it into a bag and drink from it later. And there was a lot of things throughout my whole entire experience.
Let me say, that was the answer to prayer, you say in the book.
Yes.
But that water ran out too, didn't it?
It did,
And you were waiting in a mud hole, and you were so thirsty, you did something I couldn't believe. Where did you get the water?
well, when I was at the last day there and I ran out of water, I went ahead and took my socks off because my feet were wet, and I squeezed the water out of my socks and I drank from it. There wasn't much there, but you would do anything to continue on, to be able to live. And it wasn't the best tasting water I've ever had in my life. But it was encouraging.
And food. You took your steaks medium rare.
I didn't eat much. I didn't know I was going to be there for 6 days, because you can survive 6 days without eating at all. I thought I might be there longer. But what I ate some leaves, and I ate some grass and some ants. You couldn't even have made a small salad out of. And I'll have to tell you, if you eat one ant, it doesn't exactly fill you up. So it wasn't that I was dining on insects the whole time I was out there.
After all of these days not hearing from you, how did they finally make contact out there with you? What made the contact?
Well, I had a radio, and as soon as I got on the ground, I actually was talking on the radio, and before people walked near me, and I couldn't hear anybody on the radio. Nobody responded, so I shut it off in fear of that giving me away. For 6 days, I listened on the radio, or I would transmit at times. But my radio only had a range of 70 miles, and as soon as I was shot down, all the airplanes that were flying over Bosnia now would not fly there anymore. They would fly over the Adriatic Ocean 100 miles away because they were in fear of another airplane getting shot down. You never give up. And neither did the people that were sitting there back at Aviano at my air base. Captain Hanford, who was out there trying to find me, they didn't know I was alive, but they never gave up on me, and they were going to go to every effort. He could have gone home on his mission about 20 minutes early, but it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and instead of going home to his wife, instead of going home to his comfortable house, he told himself that one of my friends might be out there, and he's not in a very good position, and I'm going to do whatever I can to maybe find him. And I'll always be indebted for him.
So what did he do?
He came up on the radio, and I finally heard him that night because I prayed and I said, "Dear God, just let somebody know I'm alive," because I didn't want to be missing in action and my family not ever know what happened to me. And he came up and he said, "This is Basher 1-1 for Basher 5-2. And I finally heard somebody after 6 days of not hearing anybody when I turned on the radio. And I came back and said, "This is Basher 5-2. He said, "Copy that. What's your squadron in Korea?" Juvats, I'm alive, I'm alive. He said, "Copy that, good to hear your voice." And that was a moment in my life that I'll never forget, because it was like being reborn, coming back. And I had every emotion rushing through my body. I wanted to laugh, I wanted to scream, I wanted to cry. And Captain Hanford even had tears rolling out of his eyes. And that's a different picture than what you see in most movies about military members. You know, we're just normal human beings with the same emotions as everyone else, but we believe in what we're doing because we believe in making this world a more peaceful place.
So as you read your story, you see how God was at work, even with Hanford, making another circle, even when he was on the edge of his fuel, right?
Yes, that's right.
You describe how these 2 helicopters came down, and immediately the doors, this was a fast operation. The doors flung open, and what came out? A bunch of Marines, right?
Right.
12 armed Marines circling to cover your run to the helicopter, right?
Yeah. They had 61 Marines, and one of the helicopters landed actually, there wasn't a very good landing spot. They landed on top of a fence in a bush, and they couldn't get the door open to let the other Marines out. So I got permission actually to advance towards the helicopters, and once I did that, that's all the motivation I needed. I started running as fast as I could. But when I looked around the helicopter bay, you know what I saw? I saw camouflage faces of Marines. There were 19-year-old boys. And that was really amazing to look around and see that.
What really kept you alive? What is the source of it? Your faith,
well,
right?
you have training, but that doesn't keep you alive. You have to have a reason to live. And it came down to faith in God. It came down to wanting to come back to the most important thing, and that was my family. But I knew inside their hearts that they were there for me, and that gave me inspiration. Even though I was by myself, I was never alone.
Now you attribute this faith, you were taught this faith as a young boy by a very positive thinking Catholic teacher, somebody, who said the most important part of your life is your relationship with God.
That's right.
So when you had the world at your attention, your first words to the media were?
That it was God's love that got me through this.
Thank you.
God bless.